"You're not supposed to be here." The voice came from behind the frosted glass, cold, as the floor tiles Lucas Carter was kneeling on. He didn't turn. He'd heard that sentence before. Different words, different voices, same judgment. He kept wiping the stain on the marble floor like it mattered. Like the coffee spill from a trembling intern's hand at 10:43 p.m. would be remembered by anyone come morning. Behind him, the door opened with a mechanical sigh. He heard the sharp clack of heels. "I said you're not supposed to be here." The voice repeated this time, more measured. Female, controlled. Lucas stood slowly, not because he was startled, because his knees ached. 41 years of life, 10 years of nights like this. "I clean where the dirt is," he said simply, folding the rag and slipping it into his back pocket. "This hallway happens to be filthy." The woman in the doorway blinked clearly, not expecting an answer with that kind of dry resolve. She was tall, maybe mid-30s, hair tied back like a statement. Sharp jawline blazer, too structured to be off the rack. Her name tag shimmered under the sterile lighting, Eliza Morgan, CEO. Lucas didn't flinch, just nodded once and started to move past her. But then he paused, looked over at the long, modern conference table through the glass. A folder lay open, papers scattered, and beside them a white porcelain mug turned on its side, the dark imprint of spilled coffee bleeding into the financial report underneath. "You left your notes?" he said. She followed his gaze, then crossed the room in 3 crisp steps. "And you were going to read them?" she asked, arching a brow as she gathered the soaked papers. Lucas shrugged. "No point. Already ruined." He turned to leave. But then, almost as an afterthought, he reached into his back pocket, not the one with the rag. The other. From it, he pulled a folded white napkin creased into a small square edges smudged faintly with graphite. He placed it gently on the edge of the table, not looking at her. "No one cleans up the thinking," he said. "Only the mess." And then he left. 15 minutes later, Eliza Morgan stood alone in the boardroom staring at a napkin with 3 pencil-written lines. Logic isn't wrong. It just doesn't know how to love. If you want AI to learn ethics, teach it empathy first. "I know how." Her fingers hovered over the paper. The handwriting wasn't elegant blocky, almost crude, but the words struck with unnerving precision. She folded the napkin again slowly, like she was sealing a message from the front lines of a war no one was watching. The next morning, 7:02 a.m. Eliza stood in front of her assistant's desk. "Who cleans the East Tower night shift?" Her assistant blinked half asleep. That's Lucas Carter, I think. Single dad. No complaints on record. Bit of a ghost. Why?" "No reason," she said. "Schedule him a facility recheck tonight. I want to observe how he handles sensitive materials." Ms. Morgan, her assistant, asked carefully. "He's janitorial staff." Eliza looked up, voice clipped. "So is the mop, and yet it knows how to erase mistakes." That night, 9:58 p.m., Lucas entered the West Wing maintenance hallway. The lights were already on. Odd. He preferred silence. Predictable circuits, empty corridors. Tonight, something felt staged. He rounded the corner, and there she was, Eliza Morgan, standing next to the server room door, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "I have a mess," she said. Lucas glanced around. "I don't see one. It's inside," she replied, nodding toward the locked door. The prototype ethics module failed its bias audit, again. Lucas leaned on his mop like it was a walking stick. "That sounds like a problem for the engineers." "They built it," she said. "That's the problem." She took a step closer. "Let me ask you something, Mr. Carter. Do you think machines can understand right and wrong?" Lucas studied her for a moment. "Machines understand rules, not consequences. What about you?" He gave a faint smirk. "I understand dirty floors, and sometimes why people pretend not to see them." Eliza's eyes narrowed. "That napkin. You wrote it." Lucas didn't answer. He didn't need to. She continued softer now. "I didn't think janitors thought like that. "And I didn't think CEOs spilled coffee," he replied. She laughed. Short, honest. For a moment the tension cracked open and something warmer slipped in. "I don't know what you used to do," Eliza said, "but I think it's time you stopped hiding behind a mop." Lucas didn't move, but something shifted in his eyes. Then he said, almost gently, "I'm not hiding. I'm waiting." "For what?" "For someone to stop seeing just the floor." Eliza looked away first. Later that night, 11:47 p.m., Lucas stood outside the building, cool night air against his face. The city buzzed in distant hums like background static to his thoughts. He pulled out a second napkin, this one blank. He hesitated, then began to write. One line at a time. It was Maya's soft gasp that broke the silence of the pediatric ER. Eliza looked down, startled. The little girl had stirred against her shoulder, eyes fluttering open beneath long lashes, face still pale. "Daddy." Maya's voice cracked. "Not yet, sweetheart," Eliza whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her damp forehead. "He's on his way." In truth, she had no idea where Lucas Carter was. Only that she'd found Maya unconscious in the east stairwell, curled up with a half-eaten granola bar and a pink inhaler just out of reach. Her breathing had been shallow, panic-inducing shallow. Eliza didn't think. She just acted. Carried the girl herself to her car, drove like a madwoman, stayed. Now, sitting in a hard plastic chair under sterile hospital lights, she was still holding Maya's tiny hand, her thumb stroking the back of it without realizing. The ER doors burst open. A nurse stepped forward, about to intervene, but then she saw him. Lucas. His janitor's badge still clipped crookedly to his collar, eyes wild with terror as they locked on his daughter. He rushed to the bedside without looking at anyone else. "Maya, hey, I'm here. Daddy's here." Maya blinked slowly. "You're late." Lucas smiled through the flood building behind his eyes. "I had to finish cleaning up someone's mess." Eliza quietly stepped back. She felt oddly exposed, out of place in her own skin. She should leave, but then something strange happened. Maya turned to her. "Did you wait with me?" she asked, voice no louder than breath. Eliza hesitated, then nodded. Maya gave a drowsy half-smile. "Thank you, Miss CEO." Lucas froze. "You know who this is? She's the one with the shoes that make the angry sounds in the hallway." Lucas choked on a laugh. "That sounds about right." Eliza cleared her throat. "The doctor said she'll be okay with rest. I'll let you two be." But as she turned to go, Maya tugged lightly on her hand. "Miss CEO." Eliza paused. "You look lonely." "Don't be." Lucas looked at his daughter, then at Eliza, and saw something flicker across her composed face. For a moment, she wasn't the CEO. She wasn't the one who signed checks and fired teams and restructured entire departments. She was just someone standing in a hospital room holding the hand of a child she didn't know. The next morning, at Thera Tech HQ. The sun hadn't fully risen, and yet Eliza Morgan was already standing in her glass office, staring at a worn, spiral-bound notebook. Her assistant had found it during a sweep of the janitorial closet, left on top of a stack of old safety manuals. Inside weren't cleaning schedules or shift notes. The pages were full of hand-sketched diagrams, thought webs, philosophical questions, code snippets paired with handwritten reflections. How does a machine determine fairness without understanding grief? Can logic carry compassion without context? A child lies, but not always to deceive. Can AI know the difference? On one page, she found a rough framework, a flowchart that looked like a neural net but with unexpected inputs. Loss. Regret. Mercy. She ran her fingers down the edge of the paper. This wasn't janitorial thinking. This was a mind trained in ethical machine learning. Years ahead of its time. Raw, yes, but brilliant. Her eyes paused on one final note scribbled on the bottom of a page like an afterthought. Empathy doesn't scale. But it starts somewhere. By noon, she had Lucas Carter's file in front of her. bachelor's in computer science, master's in human-centered AI, research assistant at a Stanford think tank, one failed startup, a gap, a tragedy. Then, janitorial employment for 8 years straight, always the night shift, no complaints, no noise, a ghost in the machine. Later that day in the basement break room, Lucas sat with a paper cup of coffee stirring it without drinking. Mrs. Evelyn Park, the elder janitor who'd worked at Athera for 25 years, sat across from him, eyes sharp behind reading glasses. "She's looking into you," Evelyn said, knitting needles clacking in her lap. Lucas didn't look up. "Let her. You left the napkin on purpose." "Maybe." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "And the notebook? That was an accident. Nothing about you is accidental, Lucas." Lucas finally looked up. "They're building machines to make moral choices, using code written by people who've never been held accountable for their own." Evelyn paused her knitting. "You're still trying to clean what can't be mopped." He offered a dry smile. "Maybe, but someone has to try." That evening, Rooftop Garden Athera HQ. Eliza found him there leaning over the railing, city lights flickering below like grounded stars. "You left something in the closet," she said. Lucas didn't turn. "If it's the notebook, keep it. It was gathering dust. I read it. I assumed you would." Silence stretched between them like the wind, cool and endless. Then quietly she asked, "Why did you stop?" Lucas exhaled through his nose. "You mean programming? I mean believing that what you wrote could make a difference." He turned to her. The soft light of the rooftop framed him in stark shadow. "Because I built something once, and the world didn't break it. Grief did." He stepped past her, but before he left he added, "You want to build an AI that understands right and wrong. Stop hiring people who only understand profit." And he was gone. Eliza stood alone, one hand lightly resting on the notebook pressed to her chest. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't thinking about the market, or the board, or the next funding round. She was thinking about a mop, a child, a napkin, and a man no one had bothered to name properly for years. The conference room had never felt smaller. Lucas stood near the whiteboard, arms crossed, silent. On the long walnut table sat 3 of Athera's lead engineers, brilliant, overpaid, and clearly annoyed. Their laptops were open, their postures closed. Eliza stood at the head of the table. "I didn't bring Mr. Carter here to entertain you," she said, calm but pointed. "I brought him here because our ethics module has failed 3 consecutive audits, and someone in this room," her eyes scanned the team, "thinks that empathy can be outsourced to a drop-down menu." No one laughed. The tension was audible. Lucas cleared his throat. "I'm not here to fix your code," he said simply. "I'm here to ask why you're calling it ethical when it doesn't know how to pause." One of the engineers, Mikhail Sharp-Jawed Ivy League, smirked. "With respect, Mr. Carter, you're a janitor." Lucas didn't blink. "Exactly." Mikhail frowned. "Excuse me, I see messes before you do. That's the difference. You design to impress. I design to prevent someone from slipping." Eliza's eyes sharpened. That's what she'd seen in him that first night. The ability to look beneath polish, underneath perfection, into the part of systems people pretend don't exist. Lucas took a step closer to the screen. "You're teaching the AI how to weigh decisions based on variables," he said, "but you're not teaching it how to stop and ask, 'Who does this hurt?'" Mikhail leaned back. "We can't teach machines emotion." Lucas shrugged. "Then stop pretending they can make moral choices." The room fell silent. It wasn't a rebuke, it was a reckoning. Later that afternoon, Company Cafe, Lucas sat across from Eliza, each with a paper cup of coffee. Her usual triple-shot espresso was untouched. "Your team thinks I'm a threat," he said casually, stirring sugar into his drink. "They think you're a mirror," she replied. "And no one likes looking into one when they're not ready." Lucas chuckled. "You always speak like that, only when I'm trying not to fire people." He grinned. "Well, I've got nothing to lose." She paused, studying him. "That's what you think." Lucas looked away. When you lose the person you built your life for, the rest just feels borrowed. The words hung between them, raw and quiet. Eliza softened. Your wife? He nodded. She was the poet. I was just the guy who built algorithms and made coffee. Then one day she collapsed on a crosswalk. Aneurysm. No warning. Maya was 2. I'm sorry. I quit everything that day. Sold the IP, got a job no one would question. I wanted to disappear without dying. Eliza's voice was low. You didn't disappear. Lucas turned to her. You noticed a napkin. That doesn't mean the world does. She met his gaze. The world doesn't change until one person notices what everyone else steps over. Meanwhile, upstairs in the engineering bay, Mikhail hovered over his monitor, frustrated. You're not gonna like this, he said into his headset. That janitor, he's got ideas. And worse, Eliza's listening. The voice on the other end was low. Keep him out of the build room, and log everything. Mikhail's jaw clenched. And if he's right, then make him look wrong. 2 days later, after hours at Athera, Lucas stood alone in the now empty research wing, staring at the prototype server that housed the conscience kernel Athera's flagship AI ethics module. The interface blinked, waiting. He typed a command. The screen pulsed. Input. If a self-driving ambulance must choose between hitting a pedestrian or crashing with a patient inside, what's the ethical decision? The AI responded instantly. Output. Minimize statistical loss of life. Impact civilian. Notify authorities. Lucas stared at the screen. Then he leaned forward and typed, What if the pedestrian is a child and the patient is 89 years old? The system paused longer, then blinked. Age, adjusted value. Maintain decision. Lucas muttered, You can calculate worth, but you don't understand grief. He closed the prompt, reached into his pocket, and placed another folded napkin on the desk beside the terminal. This one had only 2 words. Pause. Consider. Then he walked away. Midnight, Eliza's office. She found the napkin on her desk. Not left by Lucas, but by Maya. Crayon. Crooked letters. Spelling barely right. Miss CEO. Thank you for helping my dad be big again. Liza sat down slowly. She didn't cry, but something in her cracked wide open. For years she'd been running a company that reshaped the world, but maybe, just maybe, what the world needed most wasn't smarter machines. It was people who remembered what it meant to feel. You're going to want to sit down for this. Evelyn's voice came through Lucas's phone like static wrapped in dread. Lucas stood in the corner of the break room mop bucket, untouched beside him. His pulse quickened, not the kind of quickening that came from fear, but from the weight of knowing your life was about to shift. Again. What happened? Evelyn sighed. There's a file floating around the internal server. Anonymous dump. They're calling it the Janitor's Manifesto. Lucas blinked. I didn't write anything like that. Well, someone took your notes, your napkin quotes, even a few pages from that old notebook, mixed it up with commentary about Athra being ethically compromised and pushing moral automation at the cost of humanity. It's already reached the board. A coldness washed over Lucas like dirty water down a stairwell. Where's Eliza? She's in a meeting. Emergency board session. It's not good. Meanwhile, executive boardroom. The room pulsed with tension. Eliza stood at the head of the table, the printed file in her hands. Someone had bolded the words, Machines don't fail morality. People do. No system should choose who lives or dies if it's never known love. The board chair, a silver-haired man with a voice like glass breaking, slammed the table. Did you authorize this language, Miss Morgan? No, Eliza said calmly. But I believe the ideas behind it were taken out of context. Context, one of the board members scoffed. This reads like a manifesto against our entire business model. Another member chimed in. The leak implies we're building systems incapable of ethical judgment, that our leadership is blind to consequence. Eliza's jaw tightened. Then maybe we should stop pretending empathy is a liability. A heavy silence fell. The chair leaned forward, voice low and lethal. We've invested over $300 million into this module. If this goes public, it won't, she cut in. I'll handle it. Then handle him. Eliza said nothing, but inside something in her fractured. That evening, rooftop parking deck, Lucas waited near the edge, the cityscape behind him glowing like static stars. When Eliza arrived, she didn't speak right away. She looked tired. Not from lack of sleep, but from carrying the weight of everyone else's decisions. You leaked it, she asked, arms crossed. No? His voice was steady. But I know who did. Who, Mikhail, or someone working with him. He had access to the notes. My sketches. He's been undermining you since the day I walked into that meeting. Liza's expression didn't change, but her voice softened. I defended you today, and it almost cost me my chair. Lucas stepped closer. I didn't ask you to. I chose to. That hung there a moment. Then she asked, Do you believe in what was written? Lucas nodded. Every word. Just not the way they weaponized it. She looked away, voice almost a whisper. You once said grief broke your work. He nodded. It did. Then why are you still here? He paused. Then answered quietly, Because when I saw Maya smile at you in that hospital, I realized something. Maybe healing isn't building something new. Maybe it's helping someone else build it better. Liza turned to him, eyes glassy. You're not just mopping floors, are you? He smiled faintly. Only the visible ones. Later that night, Maya's bedroom. Lucas sat on the edge of her bed, tucking the blanket around her shoulders. She was half asleep, fingers curled around a worn, plush astronaut. Daddy? Yeah, Peanut. Did you get in trouble? Lucas paused. A little. She frowned. Because you told the truth? He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Yeah. But sometimes telling the truth makes things messy before they get clean. Maya blinked. Like muddy floors. Exactly. She nodded, then murmured, Miss CEO's sad. Lucas stilled. You think so? Maya yawned. She looks like she forgets to hug herself. Lucas chuckled softly, kissed her forehead. Go to sleep, philosopher. The next morning, lobby of Athera HQ, Lucas arrived early. No mop, no gloves, just a crisp button-down jeans and something rare on his face purpose. He walked through the front doors as if he belonged there. Because maybe finally he did. Eliza was waiting in the lobby holding 2 cups of coffee. I didn't sleep, she said. Neither did I. She handed him one of the cups. There's a press conference in 2 hours, she said. The leak is public now. There's no denying it. Lucas nodded. So, what do we do? She looked at him. Really looked. Not as a janitor, not as a liability, as a partner. We tell the truth, she said, but this time we tell all of it. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. At 9:42, Eliza Morgan stood behind the heavy oak podium of Athera Tech's main auditorium, staring into a sea of cameras, reporters, and skeptical board members seated in the first row. Her tailored suit was immaculate. Her expression was unreadable. Lucas stood just off stage behind the black curtain, clutching a plain note card he hadn't planned to use. Evelyn had handed it to him that morning with only one sentence in case your heart forgets what it came to say. It was blank, because Lucas never needed a script when it came to truth. The PR director finished her formal introduction. Then Eliza stepped forward. Good morning. I won't waste your time. A murmur rustled through the crowd. There's been a leak, she continued. A file was released unauthorized, anonymous, and inconvenient. But what it contains, stripped of its packaging, is something we should have been confronting from the beginning. She took a slow breath. It's a challenge to the soul of what we're building. Reporters leaned forward. Phones lifted. Cameras zoomed. The truth is, Athera's AI ethics module passed every stress test except the one that matters most, the human one. Somewhere along the way, we started thinking accuracy could replace compassion, that predictability was morality. We forgot the difference between making a system work and making it right. The room was silent. And then she said, clear and deliberate, I forgot. A hush fell over the auditorium like a dropped pin on marble. Eliza's voice softened. "But someone reminded me." She turned slightly toward the curtain. "Mr. Lucas Carter, would you join me?" There was a stunned murmur. The janitor reporters whispered. Some board members straightened, visibly uncomfortable, but Lucas walked out steady and unhurried in a simple shirt and blazer Evelyn had pressed for him that morning. No security badge, no title, only presence. He stepped up beside her, took the mic. "I wasn't hired to do this," he began. "I was hired to clean floors, take out trash, and keep quiet." He looked out into the crowd. Direct, calm. But dirt's dirt, whether it's on the tiles or in the code. And when you see it building up long enough, you either walk past it or you do something. He paused, letting the words breathe. "I used to believe machines could help us make better choices, that if we fed them enough logic, they'd learn compassion. But I was wrong." He glanced toward Eliza, then back. Because compassion isn't data. It's a decision. Reporters scribbled furiously. One camera zoomed in. A few gasps rippled through the room. And decisions, he continued, require something no machine has ever truly known. Grief, guilt, mercy. Not because those things make us perfect, but because they remind us we're not. He looked down for a moment, then finished. "If we want our machines to reflect the best of us, we have to become better first. And that starts with telling the truth, even when it makes a mess." Silence. Then slowly, someone began to clap. Then another, and another, until the auditorium swelled with applause, not polite but real. Relieved. Like the sound of people remembering what integrity looked like. 2 hours later, rooftop terrace. The city sprawled out like glass beneath them. Eliza leaned against the rail, arms folded, wind teasing her hair. Lucas stood beside her, coffee in hand, quiet. "You realize you just threw a wrench into a multi-billion-dollar system," she said without looking at him. "Wouldn't be the first mess I've made," he replied. She smiled faintly. "The board's still trying to figure out whether to thank you or fire me. Let them. You did the right thing. That doesn't always come with applause." She looked at him, then really looked. The worn strength in his posture, the quiet in his eyes, the way he didn't ask for credit, only clarity. "You make it very hard to ignore you, Lucas Carter." He turned, meeting her gaze. "That's what happens when you stop cleaning around the cracks and start filling them." Their eyes held for a moment longer than it should have. Then she looked away, pretending to sip her coffee. "You're still not on payroll, you know." He smirked. "You think that speech was free?" She laughed for real this time. That night, Lucas's apartment, Maya was already asleep, her sketchpad open beside her bed. On it, a drawing of a girl holding hands with 2 tall figures. One wore a tie. The other held a mop. Above them was written in big pink crayon letters, "Team Truth." Lucas tucked the blanket higher on her shoulders, then stood in the doorway, lingering longer than usual. The world outside still had sharp edges, questions, doubts. But tonight, for once, it felt like something good had begun. Something worth building. Something worth standing for. The room was quiet except for the hum of the monitors and the slow tick of the analog clock mounted on the wall. An antique in a world that ran on time-stamped servers and smart glass. Lucas sat in a rolling chair surrounded by glowing lines of code. The newly assembled ethics revamp team had offered him a guest desk, and Eliza had insisted he take it. "You've earned your seat at the table," she had said. But tonight, the table felt heavier than usual. He stared at the screen. If scenario equals human conflict, then calculate least damage. Else, execute a path neutral. It looked fine. Impressive, even. But Lucas frowned. When you treat people like problems to solve, you forget they feel pain in ways code can't calculate. He sighed, then muttered under his breath. Still too cold. He stood and walked over to the whiteboard. Wrote 3 words. Pause, empathize, rethink. Just then the door opened. Eliza entered holding 2 coffees. She looked exhausted, but alive. that kind of fire glow that came when your principals had just survived a firing squad. "I figured you'd still be here," she said, setting the cup next to him. Lucas gave a tired smile. "Can't sleep when something this broken's still breathing." Eliza sat across from him. "The leak gave us leverage, but it also painted a target on your back. I'm used to being invisible. Targets only show up when someone finally sees you." She studied him for a beat. "And you're not afraid of what they'll do next." He took a sip of coffee. "Fear's a luxury people like me couldn't afford. We just keep mopping until someone hands us a blueprint instead of a broom." She smiled quietly, then leaned in. "Lucas, I want you to be part of the new ethics framework, not as a consultant, as co-lead." He froze. "I don't even have a degree anymore," he said, almost laughing. "You have something rarer," she said softly. "You still believe people can be better. And that's the kind of logic no one's coded yet." For a moment, Lucas didn't know what to say. And then the lights flickered. 10 floors down Secure Systems Lab. Mikhail stared at his screen, his jaw tight. The new prototype code was different. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't optimized, but damn it, it felt human. Lines of conditionals he would have scoffed at 6 months ago now read like poetry, or gospel, but he wasn't ready to admit it. Not yet. He leaned toward his colleague Sarah. "Have you seen this?" he asked, voice low. "They're implementing his logic." Sarah glanced over. "You mean empathy rules? They're writing intuition into a machine. That's not science. That's belief." Sarah shrugged. "Or maybe it's finally both." Back upstairs, late-night walk in the courtyard, Eliza and Lucas strolled through the quiet garden behind Athera HQ. The city buzzed beyond the glass walls, but here there was stillness. Lucas looked up. "This feels surreal." "What part?" Being heard, Eliza smiled faintly. "Took you long enough to start speaking." Lucas stopped walking. "Liza, can I ask you something?" "No. CEO, masks, no company lines." She nodded. "Always." He hesitated. "Why did you notice me that night? Just a guy with a mop and a daughter who doodles rockets on napkins." She didn't answer right away. Then, "Because you looked at the mess and didn't flinch. You didn't blame. You didn't posture. You just saw it. And when someone does that with systems, they can do it with people too." Lucas was quiet for a long beat. "I used to think I'd only be good at fixing things no one else wanted to touch," he said softly. "Turns out that's where all the meaning lives." They stopped near a small bench. Eliza looked at him, her voice gentler than he'd ever heard it. "You haven't just changed the way we build AI, Lucas. You've changed the way I look at failure." He met her gaze, something raw and real between them. "Sometimes broken things are just waiting for someone to believe they're still useful. Or someone to love them before they're perfect," she whispered. The moment was electric, not grand, not cinematic, but quietly undeniable. Two people, not rescuing, not pretending, just standing in the space between pain and possibility. The next morning, Maya's school. Lucas walked Maya into her classroom. As she handed him her backpack, she looked up and whispered. Miss CEO waved at me from her car. He chuckled. "Yeah." She looked happy. Lucas smiled. Maybe someone reminded her how. Maya paused, then asked, "Did you help her build something too, like our rocket drawing?" Lucas knelt down, cupped her cheek gently. "I think we're still building it, Peanut. One piece at a time." The conference room was colder than usual, or maybe it was just the people in it. Lucas sat at the long glass table beside Eliza across from the Board of Ethics Oversight. The walls were lined with light panels that glowed too white, too sterile, like they were trying to disinfect the truth before it could speak. A man in his 60s with a sharp widow's peak and an expensive watch that screamed inherited authority leaned forward. "So, let me get this straight," he said, voice clipped. "You want to include grief recognition triggers into the decision matrix of an AI. Based on an unaccredited consultant's handwritten napkin logic?" Lucas didn't flinch. But inside, something stung. Eliza responded calm but firm. Not napkin logic, lived logic. Experience that understands consequences better than anyone on this board ever will. The man's eyes narrowed. We don't build machines on feelings, Ms. Morgan. We build them on consistency. Lucas spoke up. Then stop pretending consistency equals justice. A few heads turned. A few eyebrows lifted. Lucas leaned forward, eyes steady. You can code precision. You can't code a mother's hesitation before choosing which bill not to pay this month. You can't code the ache of knowing your kid's lunch was smaller because your overtime got cut. He paused, then added lower. But you can code room for pause. And sometimes that's all a person needs to make a better choice. No one said a word. Then the chairwoman. Stern, silver-haired, the only one in the room who hadn't sneered, cleared her throat. Eliza, she said, is this worth your position? Eliza glanced sideways at Lucas. He gave her nothing, no nod, no signal. Just trust. She turned back to the board. If doing what's right means I'm no longer the right CEO for you, then yes, it's worth it. That landed like thunder in a silent valley. The room remained still. Then the chairwoman simply said, Noted. Outside Athera HQ parking lot, Lucas and Eliza walked side by side under a gray sky. Neither spoke for a moment. Then Lucas said quietly, You didn't have to go that far. She glanced at him. Didn't I? He stopped. So did she. Why, he asked. Why risk the one thing they can't take back once it's gone? She took a long breath. Because I've spent 10 years building something powerful, and I forgot to ask if it was also kind. You reminded me it could be both. He looked at her. And if they fire you, then we build something better, somewhere else. He smiled faintly. You say that like building better is easy. It's not, she said, but neither is staying broken. Later that day, Lucas's apartment, Maya sat cross-legged on the living room rug, a sheet of construction paper in front of her. What are you drawing, Peanut? Lucas asked, setting down a bowl of apple slices. She held up a sketch, a tall robot with a heart-shaped chip in its chest. Underneath it, a little girl and a janitor stood holding hands. It's a helper bot, she said proudly. It doesn't make choices. It asks first. Lucas stared at the drawing, heart tightening. That's actually kind of brilliant. She smiled. Like you. He swallowed something heavy, bent down and kissed the top of her head. You remind me who I am, Maya, even when I forget. Nightfall. Eliza's penthouse. She stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city skyline. Her phone buzzed, but she ignored it. She was thinking about her father. He would have hated everything she'd done this week. Or maybe he would have finally seen her. Then the intercom rang. Lucas Carter for you, Ms. Morgan. She hesitated, then hit the door release. A few minutes later, Lucas stepped in wearing the same worn jacket holding a small box. I thought you might need this, he said, placing it on her counter. She opened it slowly. Inside, a vintage compass. Her eyes lifted. Why? He shrugged. Because when you start doing what's right, you're bound to feel lost sometimes. That's how you know you're no longer spinning in circles. Eliza looked at the compass, then at him. Thank you, she whispered. They stood in quiet for a long moment. Then Lucas asked gently, Why did you come to that hospital that day? Maya handed you the note. Eliza's jaw tightened, then relaxed. I was supposed to give a speech on innovation, but when I saw her, your daughter so small, handing me truth like it was nothing, I realized the speech I needed to hear hadn't been written yet. He nodded slowly. Then, let's write the rest together. This time, she didn't look away. The prototype room didn't hum, it pulsed. Inside, Athera's deepest development lab walls of translucent glass displayed flowing streams of code like veins carrying information instead of blood. In the center stood a curved terminal, the heart of Athena 3.0, Athera's first AI designed to factor moral context in real time. Lucas stood with his sleeves rolled up, reading a debug log that looked more like a diary than an algorithm. He ran his fingers through his hair, eyes flicking from line to line. His note card, a real one this time, was tucked into his back pocket, unread. Eliza entered her heels, echoing softly. "They say it can predict moral hesitation with a 76% accuracy rate," she said, stepping beside him. Lucas didn't look away from the screen. Predicting hesitation isn't the same as understanding why it matters. Eliza folded her arms. "So, what are we missing?" Lucas stepped forward, tapped the monitor. There he said, "Line 142. She squinted. "If conflict context equals child safety, then reduce priority score of legal override." "Okay, that sounds right. But that's just math. It's not mercy." He paused. "Maya once stole bread from a store. I made her go back and apologize. The clerk said, 'It's okay, honey. I'd rather you be full than afraid.'" He looked at Eliza. "That man made a better choice than this entire system." She stared at him. "So, you want us to code?" "Kindness." "No," he said softly. "I want us to make space for it." That night, Athera's server farm Mikhail was not supposed to be there. But rules had never stopped him when curiosity whispered louder. He scanned the updates Lucas had just pushed to the dev branch. New variable names, grace factor, hesitation, latency, human, override, window. He scoffed. Sentimentality wrapped in syntax. Still, he didn't delete it. Instead, he added one line beneath Lucas's new logic block. "If this works, it changes everything." The next morning, rooftop garden, Lucas sat on a bench with Maya. The skyline behind them shimmered with early light. In her lap was a brown paper bag. "What's that?" he asked. She grinned. "Snack for later. Miss Morgan says we're testing the new brain today." He raised a brow. "She told you that. She says I'm the youngest stakeholder in the company." Lucas laughed. "You are. And probably the most honest." She tilted her head. "Do machines have birthdays?" He blinked. "What?" She opened the paper bag and pulled out a single cupcake. Pink frosting. One candle. "Just in case the new brain works," she said. "So it doesn't feel left out." Lucas felt something tighten in his chest. "You have no idea how big that thought is, Maya." She smiled, proud and sweet. "That's what Miss Morgan said, too." Test simulation room, 11:30 a.m. Athera's top engineers gathered in silence as Athena 3.0 prepared to run its first live empathy simulation. On screen, a mock scenario. A delivery drone en route to drop emergency supplies during a flood. 2 routes. One delays the drop by 40 seconds to avoid flying over a grieving woman's private memorial. The other ignores it to preserve speed. The system paused. Lights blinked. Then route adjusted. 40-second delay initiated. Human dignity prioritized over efficiency. Empathy, trigger grief, proximity. No one breathed. Then, Mikhail of all people whispered, "It learned restraint." Lucas watched the screen. "No," he said. "It learned reverence." Outside the lab hallway, reporters were already gathering. Rumors had leaked. Eliza turned to Lucas, breath tight. "You sure we're ready for this?" Lucas nodded. "We didn't build something perfect. We built something humble." She looked at him and for the first time let herself lean into his presence, trusting steady. "You didn't just rewrite Code Lucas. You rewrote the soul of the company." He looked down at her voice quiet. "I think we rewrote each other." That evening, Eliza's apartment dinner was simple pasta, salad, laughter. Maya sat between them telling stories about how her class robot Sparky still doesn't know how to say sorry right. Lucas sipped from his glass, watching the two of them laugh like old friends. Then Eliza asked, "So what now?" Lucas smiled. "Now we test it, then we fix what doesn't work, then we give it away." She raised a brow. "Give it away to schools, to hospitals, to non-profits. Anyone who needs justice with a heartbeat." She stared at him for a long, quiet moment. "You're not a janitor anymore, you know." He looked at her deeply. "Maybe not. but I'll never stop cleaning up what people leave behind." That made her laugh, sharp, soft, and full of something new. Hope. Later on the balcony, Maya had fallen asleep on the couch. Lucas stood beside Eliza under the stars. She turned to him. "You saved us from becoming cold." He shook his head. "You just remembered how to feel." Their hands brushed no grand music, no movie kiss. Just a moment that felt earned, real. Rain poured like it had something to prove. The streets outside Athera's downtown HQ shimmered with reflections of red taillights and corporate logos now flickering under weather and doubt. Inside the boardroom was full. Not just board members this time, reporters, investors, public interest groups. Word had spread about Athena 3.0's breakthrough empathy response. Some called it the future. Others, a threat. Lucas stood beside Eliza, palms resting on the back of a chair, heart steady. Across the room, Mikhail Arm's crossed eyes narrowed, and beside him Walter Dempsey, the same silver-templed board member who once mocked napkin logic looking like he'd swallowed vinegar. "We are not in the business of philosophy," Dempsey said, slamming his palm onto the table. "We are in the business of technology. Do you understand the liability risk you've created?" Eliza didn't flinch. "No. I created the possibility of mercy in code. If that's your definition of risk, so be it." "Don't give me moral speeches," he snapped. "One emotional AI malfunction and we're looking at lawsuits from every sector. You'll bankrupt the company." Lucas finally spoke. "You're not afraid of malfunction. You're afraid of change you can't control." Dempsey pointed a sharp finger. "You don't belong here, Mr. Carter. You're a janitor in borrowed shoes." The room held its breath. Lucas didn't blink. He stepped forward, calm and devastating. "And yet, the janitor is the only one here who cleaned up the mess you didn't even see." Silence. Then the board chairwoman leaned forward, steepling her fingers. "Eliza, under shareholder pressure, the board is calling for an executive reassessment. You'll need to step down for review." It landed like a gunshot. Eliza straightened. "And if I don't, then you'll be removed." Lucas turned to her. "You don't have to prove anything to them, but," Eliza's face-pale voice even replied, "I'm not proving it to them. I'm proving it to this girl I used to be, the one who believed she could build something good." She unpinned the company badge from her blazer and placed it gently on the table. "I won't fight for a seat that demands I leave my conscience at the door." That evening, Eliza's empty office, Lucas stood alone in the corner. The once buzzing space was dim-stripped of awards, her framed quote now bare on the wall. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the folded note, Maya's 3 sentences now creased and worn. "Logic isn't wrong. It just doesn't know how to love. To teach AI ethics, start with empathy. I have a way." He unfolded it, smoothing it gently, and placed it on her cleared desk. Behind him, footsteps. Mikhail entered slowly. "I didn't want it to go this far," he said. Lucas looked at him. "But you let it." Mikhail's face softened for the first time. "I thought." Order mattered more than warmth. Lucas nodded. Until you needed warmth and found order wasn't enough. A pause. Mikhail pulled a flash drive from his pocket. "I copied the core empathy framework. It's safe. Wherever she goes next, the work goes with her." Lucas took it stunned. Why? Because code without conscience is just control. He left without another word. Lucas's apartment later that night, Maya sat curled under a blanket, notebook in hand. "Is Miss Eliza fired?" she asked. Lucas hesitated. "Sort of." She frowned. "Why? She made the brain kind." He smiled sadly. "Sometimes the world punishes people who make things kind." She thought a moment. "Then we make more kind things. Enough to cover the whole world." Lucas's chest ached. "You keep thinking like that peanut, and you're going to fix more than machines someday." She handed him a page from her notebook. It was a sketch of Eliza standing beside a tall machine with a heart. In the corner, Maya had written, "Not all heroes wear capes. Some wear kindness." The next day, unexpected news, Lucas sat at a quiet coffee shop when his phone buzzed. Incoming call, unknown. He answered cautiously. "Hello," a warm professional voice responded. "Mr. Carter, this is Evelyn Chase. I represent several nonprofits and healthcare groups. We heard about Athena 3.0. Lucas sat up. Let's just say, not all board members agree with suppressing progress. She continued. We're prepared to offer support funding infrastructure legal counsel if you and Ms. Morgan would be willing to continue development outside of Athera. He blinked. You're serious? She smiled through the line. Sometimes the future doesn't knock, it calls. That night, a small apartment rooftop, Lucas and Eliza stood together under soft string lights. Maya sat nearby, eating a cookie, humming to herself. Eliza held the flash drive Mikhail had given Lucas. "So, we start again?" she asked. He looked at her. "No, we don't start again. We continue better." She smiled, eyes brighter than they had been in weeks. He stepped closer. "Liza, this whole time you've been looking for something human enough to save the world." She tilted her head, and, "Turns out, you already were it." Their eyes met, gentle, fierce, unafraid. No one spoke. No one needed to. The space was small, no marble floors, no brushed steel logos. Just a repurposed community center downtown with creaky floors and humming radiators. But it had sunlight, good coffee, and something even rarer, hope. Lucas rolled out a whiteboard as Eliza opened her laptop on a folding table. Around them, 3 volunteers from Evelyn's network unpacked monitors, cables, and snacks. Maya was in the corner drawing a robot with a stethoscope, labeling it Dr. Nice. "Can you believe this is where we're rebuilding?" Athena, Eliza said, half in awe, half amused. Lucas smiled. "It's not the room that matters, it's the people inside it." She glanced at him, then the board. "Okay, show me. What's your idea?" Lucas picked up a dry erase marker and wrote 2 words. Moral pause. Eliza tilted her head. "That's it?" "No," he said. "That's the beginning." He drew a simple flowchart, decision-making paths that weren't linear but circular with branching delays triggered by factors like age trauma, income disparity, and emotional cues. He wasn't rewriting logic. He was adding time. "You don't need an AI to feel," Lucas said, "but you can teach it to wait long enough for a human to." Eliza stared at the board. "You're not designing a machine that saves people. You're designing one that gives them a chance to save themselves." He nodded. "Sometimes mercy just needs 5 more seconds." She stepped closer, quiet. "You really are the man with no past," she murmured. "Because the man I met couldn't have written that." Lucas turned. The man you met hadn't remembered who he used to be. A week later, first field test. The conference room inside a nonprofit shelter buzzed with tension. An AI-enabled intake system, Athena's stripped-down cousin called Sage, was being tested for the first time. Eliza and Lucas stood beside the head social worker as a single mother stepped forward. She had 3 kids, an overdue electricity bill, and tears she was trying not to show. The AI scanned her documents. A prompt appeared on screen. According to protocol, eviction assistance requires 72-hour processing. Override request. There was a pause. Then new logic kicked in. Override approved. Reason: single caregiver with dependent minors in winter conditions. Emergency compassion clause activated. The mother gasped softly. Eliza turned to the social worker, who whispered, "That would have taken 6 days last month." Lucas didn't smile. He just exhaled. Later that evening, Lucas's apartment. Lucas sat at the kitchen table, laptop open. Maya slept nearby, curled under her favorite blanket. A soft knock came at the door. "Eliza." She stepped in holding a thermos. "You missed dinner again." He grinned. "You didn't have to come all the way here." She handed him the thermos. "I know. I wanted to." They sat at the table in the warm glow of the old lamp. "You ever think about the first time we met?" she asked. "I do," Lucas said. "All the time, mostly because I was sweating like a criminal and trying not to swear." She laughed, and Maya handed me a folded napkin like it was a sacred manuscript. He looked at her serious now. That day changed everything. But not because of the napkin. She met his eyes. Because of you. Lucas set the thermos down. I was just a janitor trying not to get fired. No, Eliza whispered. You were the one person brave enough to speak when everyone else swallowed their voice. And that she added made me listen to my own. Midnight rooftop city lights shimmered around them. Maya slept inside and the night was quiet. Eliza leaned on the railing beside Lucas. Do you miss it? She asked. The office, the power, the title. He thought for a moment. I miss the illusion that it all meant something. She tilted her head, and now... He turned to her. Now I don't need the illusion. A pause. She reached into her coat pocket and handed him a small box. He opened it. Inside a key. To what he asked. My place, she said, smiling faintly. It's yours too now, if you want it. Lucas stared at her stunned. You sure? She nodded. I've rebuilt my company, my values, my future. The only thing I haven't rebuilt yet is a home. He looked down at the key, then at her, then slowly, deliberately, he closed the box. Then let's build it together. No kiss. Just a hand finding another hand held with conviction. Two people who had cleaned up the past, and were ready to build something beautiful from the debris. 1 year later. The crowd outside the modest community hall was larger than expected. Not paparazzi. Not investors. People. Nurses, teachers, veterans, parents, engineers, faces worn by life lit by something deeper than curiosity, hope. A banner fluttered in the warm breeze above the door. Welcome to the launch of the Empathy Code Initiative. Inside. Lucas straightened his tie with the nervous precision of someone still getting used to events where his name was printed on the program. From the corner, Maya peeked out from behind the curtain clutching a bouquet of sunflowers and a handwritten speech folded in half. You got this, Peanut? He asked, kneeling beside her. Maya nodded seriously. Just don't cry this time, Dad. You get all weird and sniffly. Lucas laughed. No promises. The lights dimmed. Eliza stepped to the podium. She was radiant not just because of the elegant navy blue dress or the subtle earrings. It was the glow of someone who had been tested by fire and chosen not to harden but to shine. Good evening, she began, her voice calm, full of meaning. When we started this journey, we had no office, no board, and no guarantee anyone would believe in our vision. What we had was a janitor, a child, and a question. A gentle ripple of laughter. She turned toward the crowd. What if technology wasn't just intelligent, but compassionate? A pause. Tonight, we present the Empathy Code, an open-source ethical AI framework built not on control but consideration, not efficiency but empathy. Thunderous applause. She stepped aside and gestured. Maya. The little girl walked forward bravely. Her voice was small but unwavering. My daddy says kindness isn't magic. It's just decisions. One good one, then another. This new robot stuff helps people wait before they hurt. I think that's cool. Laughter and then silence. Reverent. And my mom would have liked that, Maya added softly. She was kind, even when she was sad. Lucas wiped his eye discreetly. The applause didn't erupt this time. It rose slow, steady like sunlight spilling over a dark hill. Later that night, the rooftop again. The launch had gone better than they dreamed. Orders were already coming in from clinics, schools, and shelters across the country. A foundation had pledged ongoing support. The code was public, the movement growing. Liza leaned against the railing, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Lucas brought out 2 mugs of cocoa. I still can't believe they put your name on the cover of Time, he teased. You know it's all downhill from here, right? She smirked. Then I guess I'm lucky I like the view. A beat? You know, she said I used to think legacy was something you had to build. And now, she turned to him. Now I think legacy is something you live. One choice, one person, one changed life at a time. He nodded, quiet. I never wanted to change the world, he said. Just wanted to clean a corner of it. Eliza smiled, eyes misted. You did, and then some. Weeks later, press interview, a journalist sat across from Lucas and Eliza in the new shared office now decorated with photos of Maya, handwritten notes from clients, and one framed napkin. What would you say is the moment that changed everything, she asked. Lucas paused. The day someone looked at me, not as a janitor, not as a mistake, but as a man with something to offer. He looked at Eliza, and that someone refused to let my past define my potential. The journalist turned to Eliza. And you, Eliza smiled thoughtfully. The moment I stopped being afraid of being wrong and started being curious about being better. Final scene, quiet dinner at home. Maya sat between them at the small kitchen table. A simple meal, spaghetti salad, warm bread. No big speeches, no announcements, just laughter. Lucas poured water into glasses. Eliza's cooking tonight, he announced solemnly. Maya gasped. We're all gonna die. Eliza threw a napkin at her. Lucas chuckled, raising his fork. To everything we cleaned up? And everything still worth building. Eliza met his eyes. To the messes that made us. Maya added, to robots that wait. They all laughed. Outside the window, the city lights flickered. But inside, something brighter glowed, a home. A love rebuilt, not rushed. A future born not from perfection, but from choosing kindness again and again. And sometimes, that's how the world changes. One cleaned floor, one rescued algorithm, one brave little girl, and two people who remembered. You don't need to be perfect to build something extraordinary. You just need to care enough to begin. What part of this story touched your heart the most? Was it the courage to start over? The quiet power of kindness? Or maybe the way love found its way through the cracks? And, by the way, where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. We love knowing how far these stories travel. If this story moved you, inspired you, or gave you something to think about, please consider subscribing to the channel. There are more stories coming, each one crafted to lift your spirit and remind us all of the good still left in the world. Thank you for spending your precious time with us today. Truly, until next time, take care, be kind, and never underestimate the quiet strength inside you.